more great shows or join the team at sport-social.co.uk.
Hello, welcome back to the Masterclass, the number one match podcast. I'm Haider and Rob. I'm your host as ever. Today I'm joined by Rob, as always, Rob Blanchette, the Manchester United journalist and obviously a good friend of mine, and he's going to talk to us about what has been going on. Rob, look, we had an episode against Newcastle where you went in pretty hard to the team. You were unhappy, and I think a lot of people were very surprised. We're sitting here a couple of games later now. Really, shocking performance yesterday for Manchester United, coupled with, 3 games now out of 4 that we've lost in all competitions. We're sitting here and look, as a football journalist, and let's take the emotion out as a fan, but as a football journalist, from what you're seeing right now at Manchester United, should there be any concern? And should there be valid questions about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and how he is managing this team?
Okay, if I was looking at a club that wasn't Manchester United and wasn't the club that I support, would I be concerned just looking at it from a football aspect? The answer to that is yes. Now, obviously, I've seen a lot of the content made in the last 24 hours. There's lots of fan channels jumping on the Ole out bandwagon. There's obviously also a contingent of people on social media who are very Ole in. But what I'll say is that this show is not Ole out and it isn't Ole in. This is Ole sort it out, because the responsibility of this manager is to make sure that the team plays good football, but also is tactically set up, is aware, and knows what its job is for every match, whether that be the Premier League, the League Cup, whether that be the Champions League. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's job is to make sure these things roll like clockwork. And you almost have to not notice him, not notice his tactics, not notice what he says. He's quite a demure bloke anyway in public. So am I concerned? Yes, I am concerned, because I don't think we've seen a good performance since Leeds. They beat Leeds United 5-1. It was a good performance in terms of the result. That wasn't perfect, but if you win 5-1, no one's complaining. And United have won games since then. Obviously, I can already see in our comments here people saying, we're only a point off the top. That's all very true. But what I will say is this: is that the league table does not matter at this point in the season. What matters is accumulating results, but also improving your performances. What we're seeing is that United were doing okay with their results, but when you see the bad stuff, that makes you worry that performances will go on the decline. And here we are now 8 games into a season, and the decline is continuing game by game by game. So when we do our pre-production for this show, just so it's a lot of you guys know, me and Haider talk about all the facts of what's going to happen and what we want to talk about and why we want to talk about it in a certain way that we do. And when we constructed this show, it's quite clear that there are tactical problems going on at Manchester United. So we're going to address them today, because the truth of the matter is that if Ole does not sort it out, hashtag, then Ole Gunnar Solskjaer will not be at Manchester United very long. It doesn't matter what goal he scored in '99. It doesn't matter what contract he's on. It doesn't matter if the Glazers like him or do not like him. These performances are septic. They're getting worse. He's got a fantastic squad compared to what he's had over the years. And what we're seeing is that the communication's getting worse. The performances are getting worse. And Manchester United, unfortunately, are getting worse.
I think that's a great point. We have got a comment here saying, we are, 1 point off the top. We're still in contention, but it's the performances that are an issue. As you said, Rob, we're declining as the games go on. And I'm just going to talk to you guys about what the schedule is today, so you understand, what we're going to be talking about. This is not Ole in, Ole out. I don't want to have that discussion. It's just that we want Ole to be better. We want the team to be better. There's a lot of quality in the squad. There's things that aren't working. So we are going to talk about the game. We're going to talk about what's going wrong for Manchester United. We're going to talk about Bruno and Ronaldo. We're going to talk about Ronaldo specifically today in terms of, what his arrival has done for the attack. We're going to talk about Maguire's regression next to Varane as well. We'll talk about tempo issues, McFred's scapegoatism as well. That's something that we're seeing on Twitter. This isn't a simple fix of buying a defensive midfielder and suddenly we're better, because that's not what we're seeing at the moment. We'll talk about options for Ole, in-game tactics, and then we'll talk about Zidane and Conte at the end, and we'll just go through some of their statistics because they're the two names that are in the media. Again, this isn't Ole in or Ole out, Rob. This is Ole do better, Ole sort it out. So Rob, let's start with the game, and I'm going to get up the who scored graphic here. So look, I think the selection was pretty straightforward. We went 4-2-3-1. I think we almost went to a 4-2-2. Two at times with Bruno and Pogba, operating more sort of as on the left and the right hand side, but centrally. And we had Greenwood push up to go centrally next to Ronaldo. But looking over here, what are your initial thoughts? I thought the defense, we saw Luke Shaw go out off injured. We saw Maguire didn't have a great game as well. United had some real issues at the back. And there were 3 times where Villa had their 3 best chances, where it came from defensive mistakes. Really, you had the Shaw mistake, the lapse in concentration. You had Maguire's back pass. And, you had, I believe there was another mistake. I can't remember which one it was. But all in all, it was disjointed. United played into Villa's sort of game plan of wanting to keep it open. We didn't keep it tight. And unfortunately, Manchester United lost. And with Bruno's miss, that would have papered over the cracks. It was just not a good performance. And it's not just this week that's been a problem. It's been the last 3-4 games where United have just not been up to scratch in terms of performances. And they're getting what they deserve, to be honest, Rob.
They are. And what we're seeing is that we're seeing issues that are both historical in some points and also new. And historical ones we've talked about until we're blue in the face. It's stuff that we've talked about going back into last season and why United maybe hiccup at the wrong time or why they stutter. And then we're talking about new issues, like chemistry issues between potentially the new signings, obviously Cristiano Ronaldo. How does Ronaldo fit with those 3 guys that are behind him there? So this is not about, are these players any good? Because they are good. We know they're good. It's about what are United doing? What is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer doing with his tactics to modify the team to help them be better and to help them win games? So that's twofold. One of them is how you set up, and the second one is in-game management. And what we're seeing is that the setup's not very different to what we know. We know 4-2-3-1. We know that's what Ole likes to do. But the in-game management is so erratic and sometimes either way too slow in how Ole executes ideas, or it's the opposite. He's kind of feels like he's rushing into stuff and doing it within a minute's thought. So when you look at the game yesterday, and we'll start off with yesterday's game, because obviously this is what this masterclass is initially about. But obviously, we're going to go into a lot more things than just this match. With the setup there with 4-2-3-1, Aston Villa came along and said, we're going to play a low block. Well, lo and behold, what a surprise that is. A team comes to Old Trafford and plays a low block. 3 at the back, 5 in front, 2 at the top. Obviously, that 5 dropping very, very deep, making it difficult for Manchester United to operate. Now, we know that Man United have had problems over many, many years with playing the low block. We've played counter-attack for many years to kind of discourage teams to do that, to get them to come onto us. But when you've got Ronaldo up top and you've got someone like Bruno Fernandes in there, you're not going to have a system that only lets you play counter-attack. You're going to have to play some actual football. So that's down to the players. But you have to help the players. You have to find systems that make them tick. And this Manchester United system is incredibly stagnant. The back 4 have regressed for me. I think, you said it at the top of the show, don't want to kind of give our cards away too early, but Harry Maguire has regressed in terms of his ball carrying, 100%. I think the fullbacks are suffering a little bit. I think Wan-Bissaka is in a world of pain at times. He doesn't really know whether to stick or twist. And then you look at that front 4, Pogba, Fernandes, Greenwood and Ronaldo. On paper, that's probably one of the best front 4s in the world. But I tell you what, if you put them on a local park here, they wouldn't be able to find each other at all because they just haven't got their spacing correct. They look like strangers and they've all got their own little game plan in their heads about what they want to do. So it's up to Ole to debunk it. It's up to Ole to get in these players' heads and find a system that works. We will also talk about McFred. Everyone wants to talk about McFred every time Man United fail. I watched that game yesterday. They weren't fantastic, Fred and McTominay. But do you know what? Being in the stadium and watching their movement, at some points, they were the only 2 fighting against McGinn in the middle there. There were only 2 actually really trying to win the ball back for the guys that are supposed to win you the football match. So I didn't have a problem with the double pivot yesterday. But you can see from the shape of the game, nothing that we don't know, but still plenty game to game to game to game to game to game and across the 8 games of the season that have become problematic and are now turning into defeats. 3 defeats in the last 8, or even worse, 3 in the last 4 is not where we want to be, and it's not where we can be if we want to win trophies.
Yeah, it's worrying form, Rob, to be honest with you. But when I have a look at something I do want to pick up on, though, is I want to talk about Mason, because Mason's had a fantastic start to the season, and Mason's all-round game has improved tenfold. You know, he's very good in terms of obviously we know what he can do in terms of his goal scoring. I think him in the build-up, he's much better. He's understanding, you know, when to give and when not to. My biggest issue yesterday, though, was Rob, that every time he got the ball at the edge of the box, he went and had tried to have a shot, and that was a problem for me, Rob, because you know, every single time we need to put the ball in the box a little bit more. You've got Ronaldo in the box, and my issue is that I'm having a look at this, and we're going to transition now into Ronaldo. Is that Ronaldo's come in and he's going to score you goals left, right, and center. That's what he'll do if you give him service. But since Ronaldo has come in, Manchester United are one, either looking to just feed him, or two, everything is sort of breaking down in the final third. Now let's talk about that a little bit, because United have got one of the best goal scorers in the world, one of the greatest players of all time in their team. Why is it that the attack's actually looking more one-dimensional than it did when he wasn't here last season?
You have to ask Ole Gunnar Solskjaer that. So, like you just talked there about Mason, you know, have we not spent years telling Mason Greenwood to get the ball in and around the box and shoot? Is that not what we've developed? Is that not the character that we've put in there to say, Mason, if you miss, doesn't matter because you're so good, you'll hit the target? Now, Mason had the best chances yesterday, there's no doubt about it. And there was one point where he should have passed the ball to Bruno, who was on the left. But if I'm Mason Greenwood, I'm shooting. That's it. That's his job. His job is to score goals. His job is also to be part of the attack in a rounded sense. But this is why we are now asking these questions of Ole, because Ole's got to find a system in that front four that works for everyone. And that isn't happening. It's like we've got 4 individual ballers in an NBA team, yeah, and like a little bit of defense behind it. Or, you know, you've got McFred and McTominay running around trying to win back the ball for these 4 at the top. And then when they get the ball, there's no chemistry there. So you have to ask yourself, well, what are they doing in training? So it's not very difficult if you're Mason Greenwood or Paul Pogba to look up and see the greatest goal scorer of all time in front of you and think, I'm going to pass him the ball. But none of that is really happening. United are looking for Ronaldo without looking for Ronaldo. And that is a problem because it creates a disconnect. So those 3 behind, and I think that Bruno's a big part of this. Bruno's playing more as a number 10. He's kind of slipping into number 8 roles at times. So like, you know, the 4-2-3-1 there that we talk about all the time. United are trying to transition into 4-3-3. You see it. So Bruno will drop into the 8 role. Fred and McTominay will push up quite high. The defense will then push up behind them, so it's more compact. And then it's essentially 4-3-3. And United do that, you know, stylistically every 10 minutes in a match. Yeah, it's something that they're clearly practicing. But you know what, Haider? It isn't working. It's not working anywhere near like it should. It isn't ticking. So like you just said there about Ronaldo, you know, how do you get the most out of Ronaldo? Well, what you do is you get him one-on-one opportunities in the box. That's what you do. The 3 behind him, Pogba, Fernandes and Greenwood, almost need to be faux number 10s, all 3 of them. They need to come narrow and play balls through the channel, 2 feet in front of Ronaldo, so Ronaldo can take 1 touch and pop it. And if he gets 1 touch in the box, he's probably going to hit the target. We know this. But what is Ole telling these boys?
But Rob,
because it's so mixed up.
Interject, because you've said you're bang on with that when you're playing with Ronaldo up top. But you've said earlier on that, you know, we've asked Mason to get his head up and shoot when he gets the ball in good areas. But this is where it's a coaching point, Rob, because he's obviously been told to do that, hasn't he, for the last year or so, and now you're telling him to pass it to Ronaldo. So what is going on? This is a coaching point because it's breaking down.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to bring up something because I hate this word, patterns of play, and all the vibes and all this rubbish that you see on Twitter. But because most of the time people don't understand what patterns of play is. United have got a system, the 4-2-3-1, and they have a way that they want to play. But when it does come to the final third, Rob, right now as it stands, we are playing on instinct rather than we're playing on, right, this is how we've been coached to play in the final third. And a lot of that has come because Ronaldo's coming. I'm not blaming Ronaldo because Ole has to find a way to get the most out of Ronaldo. And right now, as it stands, we're not doing that.
No, we're not. And I think when you talk about Mason, you know, how long have we been telling Mason Greenwood to shoot? Since he was 12. You know, not last year, not in the last 2 years. Since he was 12, we've been developing this boy to be a striker or to be a wide forward that scores goals and gets the ball in the correct areas in the channel, because that is what modern football's about. So I don't blame Mason at all yesterday for taking those chances, because do you know what? If he hits every one of them right, he gets a hat trick yesterday. And we're sat here today talking about how Mason Greenwood saved Manchester United against a very average Aston Villa team at home when he's got Ronaldo and Pogba and Fernandes next to him. We're talking about Mason. So I've got no issues with Mason Greenwood. I think Mason Greenwood should carry on doing what he's doing. There should be a time now and then that he should pass the ball more. But do you know what, Haider? It's almost like Manchester United need a £75 million creator on the right-hand side, doesn't it? It feels like that, doesn't it? So what's going on there?
Yeah.
So this is the issue.
Rob.
Sorry.
Yeah. What I said yesterday was that yesterday was crying out for someone like Jadon Sancho. United needed someone who could unlock defense, someone that had good ball retention in the final third. And one puzzling thing for me was that we didn't have someone that could do that. We had Mason on the pitch, we had Ronaldo, and we brought Cavani on. And that was, for me, that was puzzling. That was so puzzling, because you brought on a striker that put the ball into net with Cavani, but who was gonna feed him? And that's what I found a bit puzzling. I mean, there's a question here, Rob. I just want to bring it up, saying, Paul Ince is saying we don't have patterns of play. Is that an agenda, or is that correct?
We have a very rigid pattern play. So 4-2-3-1, as I've just explained there, stylistically, it's what Ole likes to do. But this season, certainly with the players that we've brought in, they are going into a more of a 4-3-3 shape on the front foot. So it's not a case of United starting with the 4-3-3 in a way that, say, Liverpool would, going back over the last few years, but they are transitioning. So it's protecting the back four with Fred and McTominay. It's part of their job. And then it's getting that ball, that 5 or 10 yard ball, into Fernandes, and then Fernandes turning and finding one of those three in front of him. So that becomes the 4-3-3 shape. So it's not a rigid pattern, but you can see it is not well coached. This is the issue. So if Bruno Fernandes is dropping into the pocket and turning and then seeing Ronaldo in front of him, what can Bruno Fernandes do? He's got to play a Hollywood ball. He's got to play a perfect 30-yard ball through the channel to allow Ronaldo to run. Now, that can happen. Bruno can do that. But as I explained in last week's masterclass, when you just resort to the Hollywood style of football, it only works once or twice out of 10. So yesterday, United did it 10 times. It didn't work once. 0. And that's what can happen. So United need to play some more simple football. So you need that, if Fernandes is dropping deeper, you need to see that Pogba drops with him and then actually play, say, 1-2 to get up the pitch, to get closer to Ronaldo. Or you need to see that that Greenwood comes a little bit more narrow and that you have Wan-Bissaka overlapping, which then pulls the defence apart. And then you've got more holes to work around. So United are not doing any of these things. They're it's all like you just said there about the whole vibes thing that people on Twitter go on about. And it is trying to execute tactics through hot air. That's all it is. It's like we have an idea of what we want to do. We just don't really know how we're going to do it. And you see this. I watched Liverpool yesterday at Brentford, and after the game, after obviously getting back from Old Trafford, and even though that game was 3-3 and Brentford had chances to win it, Liverpool looked sensational with the ball at their feet. Yeah. And that was a game that they conceded 3 goals against. 3 goals against a Brentford side. Man United have got nowhere near that level of play yet that I've seen out of Liverpool at their best this season and Man City at their best. So that worries me.
Well, to an extent.
Yeah, so Chelsea lose yesterday, right? They lose 1-0 at home, to a very good City team. But you lose that game. That obviously claws back the points totals that you want. But you look at Man United, and it's literally been 8 games and 7 games of consistent problems of the same problem. So it's not like a different problem every week, Haider. It is the same problem. So how do you solve that? Well, you could solve that in that game yesterday by not bringing on Cavani with 9 minutes to go when you're not creating anything. You could sit Cavani on his backside and you could say to Jadon, I need you to go and win me the game. You can say to Jesse Lingard, you're on form, go and win me the game. You could say to Donny van der Beek, do you know what, boy, you've sat on your backside long enough, go and win me the game. So these are all things that Ole can decide, but he's opting not to do it. So when we talk about in-game management, yeah, of course.
Because you brought up a really good point there, and it's made me think that with Ronaldo, right? So you brought in Cristiano Ronaldo, a huge character, Rob, someone that will want to play every single game.
Yeah.
there are going to be opportunities and times, Rob, where actually taking Ronaldo off is more beneficial for the team. Maybe you want a bit more. You maybe want, for example, you want Cavani up there, who's going to be a bit more traditional and play off the last man. Maybe you want Martial in there. I'm just throwing names in there. You know, that who'll be a bit more sort of busy and maybe move around a bit more. United have options. Is there a fear that Ronaldo is going to play every single week, that Ole's going to think, maybe I'm not going to take him off, even if it's for the benefit of the team in that specific game or scenario?
Yes, and this is why I said when we signed Ronaldo, it wasn't a negative, but I said, if you sign Cristiano Ronaldo, it doesn't fix all the other bits that you're not doing particularly well before. So United come second in the league last year. What are you looking for? You're looking for a goal scorer that gets you more goals, but you have to fix the creation issue. So what do? You buy Jadon Sancho. So that's a good start. There you go. You get Jesse Lingard back from West Ham. That's another good start. You've got Donny van der Beek. You put him in the gym for 2 months and you say, Donny, get better. So these things are all good. What I will say is this. I don't think Ronaldo played badly yesterday. But if Martial hadn't put that performance in, he would have got pulled after an hour. So the logic tells you that if you want to pull your striker because you need something up there, it should have been Ronaldo off yesterday and Cavani on in that moment. Now, Ole only had one substitute because obviously the injuries. So you can kind of take that as a reason to why he didn't make more changes.
Yeah, that needs to be taken into consideration.
It does. But we are seeing that Ole's in-game management overall has not been good. So when you're trying to win a game against a low block Aston Villa team who are pretty average themselves, but probably did have the best chances. And they had the best chances because of Manchester United's play, not because of Aston Villa's play. If you're trying to win that game, I don't think the cleverest thing is to bring on Cavani, who's not played a minute yet this season, with 9 minutes to go. I think that ends up being almost like a populist choice. It's like saying to the fans, I'm going to give you what you want. You got Cavani on the pitch, you got Ronaldo on the pitch, you got Bruno on the pitch. When those 9 minutes, United looked as useless as they had done in the other 81. It would have probably made more sense to me with 20 minutes to go to say, right, I'm going to turn the screw on this Aston Villa team. And Jesse's been playing well. I'm going to bring him into one of the wide positions. Do you know what, Mason? You've run your course today. Maybe you're coming off now. You've had your 70 minutes. Come on. And do you know what? I bought this lad from Borussia Dortmund who's pretty good. So I need to give him a little bit of a go. So if I want to create things for my star striker, the greatest striker of all time, then maybe I should put some creativity on the pitch. So these are Ole's. So this is on Ole. This is why we talk about Ole. And you might have like Ole in people being upset about talking about Ole. And on the flip side, you've got Ole out people who can't, Ole can never do any good. So when Ole makes a really good decision, it's just the same that he's not Klopp, he's not Guardiola, he's not anyone else. The fact of the matter is that in these 8 games and the 7 performances that have been below par, except for obviously the one at Leeds, there are tactical problems that are unfolding game by game by game. As you noted, I got a lot of kind of blowback from the Newcastle match where we won that game 4-1. I was at the game. But from what I saw, it felt wrong that tactically there were things not happening. Players were not doing basics and they were kind of losing the ball in strange areas. I often talk tactically about where a player starts on a football pitch. So which part, where does he want to receive the ball? Does he want to receive it 20 yards forward where he can affect play? Or is he just comfortable coming back for it, with his back to goal and try and playing the short pass? And at Manchester United at the moment, there are way too many players who are happy to do that, play the easy ball backwards, but they're not playing the simple ball forwards. So that has to sit on the manager's lap. It has to say to Ole, why is that? Ole's quite quick at saying in press conferences, I will not discuss my tactics. And that's fine. Last week, he had 1 or 2 journalists question him and he got kind of fronted up to it. And he kind of said, I don't want to answer those. I don't need to answer them. The issue is that if you're playing this poorly, journalists are going to ask you hard questions. If you're playing well, journalists won't ask you those questions. So at the moment, we're putting that to Ole because we have to see progression when you've spent £410 million.
Yeah, it's absolutely spot on, Rob. Look, I've got a graphic up here on the screen. If you listen to this, obviously on Spotify, we have a graphic here of United's first 8 games of the season. So you have the win against Leeds, which is United's best performance. We drew with Southampton. We beat Wolves, quite fortunately, to be honest with you. Then we beat Newcastle 4-1 as well. Then we've lost against Young Boys, as we all know. We beat West Ham in the league, lost West Ham in the EFL Cup, and we've lost to Aston Villa. Then you're looking at the games, Rob, that are coming up. You've got Everton next at home, Leicester away, Atalanta at home, Liverpool at home, Tottenham away, Atalanta away, City at home, Watford away, Villarreal away, Chelsea away, and then you've got Arsenal at home. And obviously, we've got Villarreal coming up as well. That is an absolutely horrific run of fixtures, Rob. And let's sort of talk about, I brought that up because I want to talk about something we spoke about last week, and that was the tempo problems. Because United, if you're looking at all these games here, barring Leeds, I would say, and we discussed the Newcastle game. To be honest, you I was pretty happy after the Newcastle game, but what you have said, some of your fears have actually come true, and we've seen that in the last 4 games. But especially in those last 4 games, Rob, maybe minus EFL Cup game, I know we made 11 changes. I thought United's tempo was pretty good there. Looking at the West Ham game, tempo in the league, tempo was off. Yesterday, tempo non-existent. Newcastle game, again, we scored 4 goals, but tempo was a bit of an issue. One of the biggest things with this United side, Rob, and I said this, is that we don't move the ball quick enough. Another issue against low blocks is that, our wing play hasn't been good enough this year, so we're not overloading the wide areas as well. Another thing that's an issue, Rob, is that, I feel that when you're looking at the fullbacks, and we saw that when Luke Shaw came off. When Luke Shaw came off that left-hand side, the left-hand side was almost non-existent, and obviously Dalot was out of position. This is a real problem, because if Shaw's out for an extended period of time, and Telles has come in and showed that he doesn't give what Luke Shaw does, he doesn't give progression in terms of his ball carrying, he can cross quite well, but he's not a like-for-like fit. United are going to have even more issues, Rob, when it comes to the tempo, when it comes to, breaking down these low blocks, because teams are just going to come and basically park themselves, be compact, and United are going to be the ones with more possession. And then we're in trouble, because if they're going to hit us on the counter, and we've seen that before the West Ham game, or after the West Ham game in the league, we did discuss, and we said that Manchester United have been counter-attacked more than any other side in the league. It's actually quite worrying when you're looking at the fixtures coming up, that if we cannot stop this slump in performances, there could be a couple more losses down the line.
This is why when you play your first 8 games of the season and everyone is fit, you've got to find a way to become better every match. So if you get to a point where you hit a brick wall because you lose 1 or 2 players, that you're then ready to go, that the squad's been rotated, there's fitness there, that there's more sharpness, and that everyone is happy with their roles. But what we're seeing there, you said with the games there, we can see on the left of our screen, is that after the Leeds match, it was a draw, win, loss, win. That's okay. But the issue there is that those performances started to slide massively from Southampton. Yeah, so the 1-1 at Southampton wasn't great. The 1-0 win at Wolves was not great. You said you were happy about the Newcastle game. I wasn't, but you win that game, so it doesn't matter. No one cares. No one loses any sleep. But then the Young Boys game was a disaster. You get away with one at West Ham. Then you don't get away with it against West Ham at home. And then you play Aston Villa, and that slide then becomes the big kind of defeat that punches you in the face. So when you look at the fixtures to come, it just didn't look at it in blocks. You don't need to look at it in this kind of long. We've got up there, the next, 11 games or so you've got up there? But just look at it in kind of 3-game blocks. Everton, Leicester, Atalanta. It's a horrible little block. 3 blocks. You got to do something in that 3. After that, it's Liverpool, Tottenham, Atalanta. Even worse. Then the next 3, City, Watford, and Villarreal. And then you cap it off with Chelsea and Arsenal. That run of games can get you sacked, right? So if you're not playing well up in your first 8 games of the season, you go into those games, and if you fail for whatever reason, you might have injuries, you might not be playing well, but if you can't put your tactics together, all of those teams who are very good are going to spank you and hurt you. So that's 11 games that United need to manage. Now, the irony of all of this, Haider, is that I think United play better against better teams. So quite the issues there. So, you play your teams that are not particularly good. They play a low block against you. They make you look silly. You can't sort it out. You lose the match. You draw the match. Performances look bad. It will be ironic that United will play Everton at home next week and maybe play a little bit better. Then go to Leicester and wallop Leicester, who are not in particularly good form themselves. And then you've got Atalanta, Liverpool, Tottenham. If you win those 3 games, you're flying again, aren't you? You're back to where maybe we wanted to be at the start of the season. So none of this is irretrievable. But our job on this show is to talk tactics. It's not to talk just about blue sky. It's not just to talk about what the potential is. The potential of this squad is to win titles. We know this. we're trying to look at factual information that we're seeing unfold in front of us. I just see here, obviously, in the comments, someone's put here, it's Carl Anker who asked about tactic questions
Yeah,
in the press conference anymore.
Off air, didn't we, about this?
And and it says that he's obviously been removed from the press conferences, and that is bad. And yes, it is bad. That's 100% bad, because you cannot just turn away from these questions. And the reason why we wanted to do this show is that we never, like a year ago when we talked about it and actually started doing the masterclass, it was because these questions were not being asked. We weren't asking the manager the hard questions. Even going back into the Mourinho era, people were just going, well, it's Mourinho. He's a genius. He's a god. So he's going to sort it out, isn't he? Well, no, he didn't. It got worse, and it got bad, and it got so bad that even giving him a 5-year contract didn't help, and he was gone. Bullet to the head, and it's finished. So I think Ole is tap dancing with a really bad schedule now. This schedule is not nice. If I'm him, I'm looking at those games and I'm worried, and I'm thinking, I've got injuries now. I'm going to have to somehow rely on Tellers and Dalot. Dalot came on yesterday. I didn't think was particularly good. There was one moment, and I'll talk as a fan here for just 1 second, that towards the end of the game, Edison Cavani had the ball on the left and Dalot played it to him. And I was screaming at Jogo to just overlap him. That's what I was screaming, overlap, overlap, overlap. And he got his head up. He saw where Cavani was. And rather than overlap, he ran 20 yards backwards to cover his position. And Cavani was then obviously isolated and lost the ball. And I was like going mad, because in that moment where you're trying to win a game, or you're trying to get back in a game, so I think it might have even been when Villa had scored, why is your fullback not overlapping? So there are lots of these things that I think come down to, a manager talking in a player's ear and saying what you can and can't do. Because in that moment, Dalot thought, I need to cover. He didn't think about overlapping. Luke Shaw might have just done it, because Luke Shaw just says, I'm Luke Shaw, I've got to go and do it, I've got to overlap. So these are lots of these little nuances that we're picking up on that you see in the stadium that maybe you don't notice on TV. And I think when you look at these big games coming up, United are almost going to have to be perfect, Haider. They're going to have to be 8 and 9 out of 10s. And I would say at the moment, the performances for me are maybe about 3 or 4s. And you might be able to beat Newcastle 4-1 with a 4 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10. I'll tell you what, you're not beating any of those teams coming up with a 5 out of 10. You might beat Watford. Yeah, you might nick something at Villarreal. But tell you what, Chelsea, even Arsenal, Tottenham, they're all going to hurt you if you do not play to your potential and show that you're a championship contending team.
Yeah, well said, Rob. Rob, I want to bring up, because let's talk about, we've spoken a little bit about Ole's in-game management, but there's a comment here, and I think this for me, this is not to have a go at you, Mac and Cheese, like I understand your points, but this is where a lot of it stems from me, Rob. It's the binary nature of people's opinions. Or, for example, like we spoke about Carl Anker, and Carl, obviously, I didn't know that Carl wasn't allowed into the press conferences. That's really shocked me, actually, and that completely goes against the whole freedom of speech and all that sort of stuff. But this comment here saying there's always talk about Ole's in-game management. He's made good ones, but everyone ignores it. That's not true, because this is a thing that people think that if you're criticizing Ole or you're criticizing something that he's done, it's an attack on him as a person. The other way, we've already spoken about it with the binary opinions, of people that want him out, that can't give him any credit. At the end of the day, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has done some fantastic things for Manchester United in terms of rebuilding the club, rebuilding the squad. United were going towards Barcelona-esque ruin, let's be honest, with that wage bill and the mess that Mourinho left behind. But as Manchester United manager, you are going to have more scrutiny on you, and you're going to have people asking you day in, day out, what are your tactics? And you've got to be at the top of the level, Rob. You've got to be at I'm talking the Guardiolas, the Klopps, the Tuchels of the world as a Manchester United manager, and he has to be held to that standard. And I think the problem is at the moment there's some people who are either too scared to criticize, or there's the other side of the coin where people are so aggressive and so abusive. At the end of the day, Rob, from what I'm seeing in his in-game tactics this season, last season he did well at times, but this season alone, what I'm seeing, Rob, I'm not seeing improvements, and that's a concern for me.
Just to address the comment, I think there is a general consensus from a huge amount of Man United fans that he can't do this job. So when things go wrong, they just start banging a drum. So I have some sympathy with that. What I'll say is that this show is not about addressing those things. I'm not interested in people's opinions of whether they're pro Ole or against Ole. In the same way that at the end of the Mourinho era, I wasn't interested in people who were pro Mourinho or against Mourinho. I was purely making football comment. So there are times, obviously, where it sounds harder because what you see on the pitch isn't very nice. So in that Mourinho end of that era, people were like, you're very anti-Mourinho. And I was like, well, I'm anti-bad football, so I would like him to go. And then within a month or two, he was gone. He was sacked. And I think the same with Ole is that I'm not pro Ole, but I also do think that you can make all of these points with football terminology. You can talk like a football person. You don't need to talk like a spoilt child who's not happy that their dummy's been thrown out the pram and you can't reach it, that you didn't get your Pochettino, that you didn't get a different kind of manager. So we're going to talk about other managers towards the end of the show, and I think that'll be quite interesting for our audience and our viewers, because there are options for Man United. I think as it stands, Haider, it's now about Ole proving that when we talk about in-game management, you've got to get 90% of your in-game management right, because if you don't get 90% right, you probably will start losing games. And I think with Ole, there's been plenty of times where he's made great, changes, but it's worrying that United have become that team that has to go 1-0 down to then change stuff to then go and win matches. And that's the team
Rob,
we are.
What is that, though? Is that a mentality thing? We've been speaking about this a lot, because actually the mentality to come back from those defeats is absolutely fantastic. But is that a player problem? See, how much blame do you give to the players, to the management, to the coaching staff? Because I do want to bring up as well that, Ole does delegate a lot of his coaching duties to McKenna, Carrick, his coaching team. So, there's something Sir Alex is. I'm not comparing Ole to Sir Alex before someone jumps on me. I'm just saying that we look at Tuchel, Klopp, and Pep, and they're all tacticians. And some fans want a tactician. I like a tactician as well. This show would be great if we could be talking about more into deeper tactics and and that sort of thing. But if Ole is delegating, and that's what Sir Alex did, and that's what Wenger did, and that's fine. If he's doing that, Rob, then it's the coaching stuff. But as a manager, if you're in charge of that coaching team and they're not fixing those issues that are, they're repetitive issues, then it is on the manager, isn't it? Because that's his coaching staff and they're an embodiment of him as well.
Every manager ultimately delegates. So that happens in any business structure, any football club. So we do know of Ole that he puts a lot of faith in his coaches. He's assembled that coaching team, and that's how he wants to go forward. But let's not get away from the clear fact that if it fails and the coaching fails and tactics fail, it's on the manager. Ultimately, when Cavani comes on that football pitch yesterday with 9 minutes to go, that is on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It doesn't matter if McKenna has said, boss, here's a grid system and I've shown that Cavani can get into this gap here and all. It doesn't matter. It's up to Ole in that moment to make the right tactic. Nobody looks at Pep Guardiola and talks about his extensive coaching staff that he has there and then say it's any of his coaches. Do they? No one was saying, Mikel Arteta was the real brain at Man City. No one's saying that. So no one is saying that about Michael Carrick, and no one is saying about McKenna. And even if United had success, we would then be lauding Ole. We wouldn't be all lauding McKenna. So we have to be careful about how we stage these things. I think when things are not good, managers have to come up with solutions. It's all about problem solving. And like you were just saying there, is it the player, is it the manager, or how kind of what's the mix? Well, players have to interpret a manager's direction or how they want to play the game. But the issue that I can see at the moment is that there's no direction. And that's what I feel that when I watch United, I see all these great players. I see they're all very skillful. They've all got, there's kind of half of them have got great touches and then the other half can't control a football. And that's worrying. But then you kind of look at the direction of what they should be doing in the flow of the pitch, and there's some disconnect. So that has to come from the manager. It might be that Michael Carrick isn't doing his job right. It might be that McKenna's not doing his job right as coaches. It might, people talk about Mike Phelan. What's Mike Phelan's function? Well, he's a man manager. He's there to do what he did with Fergie. So it's not on him about, if the pass comes off or not, but it's always on the manager, because that ultimately he puts that coaching team together. He bears ultimate responsibility, and he will say that in every one of his press conferences. He's held his hand up and gone, "Yep, it's on me when we lose, and when we win, I can take credit for stuff." Then I just think with Ole is that what will he change to make this better? I'm not so sure that he will make changes at this point.
Let's talk about that, Rob.
Yeah.
What are the options for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer then for changes? I mean, look, there's a lot of issues, Rob, and people will go back, and we'll talk about McFred after, because I think we need to talk about the scapegoatism that goes on with them. But what can Ole Gunnar Solskjaer change? Looking at those run of fixtures, those awful run of fixtures, what can he change to get Manchester United back winning and getting the performances better?
I think the issue is that when you buy Ronaldo, Sancho, and Varane, and they are your changes, then what do you do to change the changes? So that's an issue, isn't it? So you buy Ronaldo, and there's a kind of consensus opinion that you can't really drop him because he is the best striker of all time. If we dropped him and played Anthony Martial in the next game in the Champions League, everyone would go ballistic, wouldn't they? Yeah, there would be shows talking about sack Ole Gunnar Solskjaer for that one decision alone, wouldn't it? So this is part of the issue when you bring in Ronaldo. When you look at Jadon Sancho, it's the flip decision, isn't it? Is that Ole doesn't feel comfortable playing him in every match at the moment. So he'll have his reasons for that as well. So to answer the question, what can he change? He has to kind of change the in-game nuances. So I want to kind of talk about those things because I think we need to talk about Bruno and Pogba together. Bruno and Ronaldo. We need to talk about what's going on with Varane and Maguire, and we need to talk kind of other parts of the football pitch.
Fullbacks as
because
well, Rob.
They're the bits that Ole can tweak and change. He's not going to be able to make wholesale changes, Haider, to make this work. He's not going to suddenly say, do you know what? I'm dropping you, Cristiano. He's not going to say, oh, do you know what, Bruno? You're not playing this week. It's not going to happen. These things won't happen, so they're not worth discussing. It's kind of dead air. We could talk about it till we're blue in the face. I think what we need to look at is the partnerships on the football pitch and how Ole can impact those partnerships to get a better product out of Manchester United.
Yeah, no, it's something that I mentioned a couple of episodes ago about these partnerships. And when you're having a look at some of them as well, Rob, I mean, look, what benefits United more? We both love to see Pogba off that left-hand side because it gets him further forward. It gets him into dangerous areas. His creativity is fantastic. But when you're looking at McFred, I'm going to talk about McFred now because I think they are unfairly scapegoated. I saw as soon as people saw their names on the team sheet, there was just the whole outcry. And I'm not sitting here and saying, Rob, that McFred are the greatest midfield partnership in the world. I'm not saying they're the greatest footballers in the world. I know their deficiencies, but I think that is one area people think if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had a midfielder, suddenly everything would be okay. And I don't think that's the issue because there's so many other moving parts that aren't working. We've mentioned the Maguire with Varane issue. We've mentioned, Luke Shaw hasn't looked as progressive as he did last season, Rob, and I think that's a bit of an issue as well. We're not seeing Maguire carry the ball more progressively at the moment this season as well, and he was doing that. He's one of the best in Europe for doing that. We have issues in terms of our wing play. Jadon Sancho is not getting a game at the moment, and like you said, he's got reasons for that. So when I'm having a look at McFred, for me right now, they're actually the least of the issues. What I would have done though is if we were playing Villa like we were yesterday, if it benefits the team more to have Paul Pogba in the pivot, then that's what Ollie's got to do as a starting point. And I think, when Marcus Rashford does come back, I think he's starting straight into the team on the left-hand side because, I think United have missed his directness and they have missed someone that will run the channels. I
think you need to put it in terms of compartments. So you just said that you want to talk about McFred. I want to talk about all of the partnerships and I want to talk about them in the correct order. So I look at it as a sliding scale. Problem 1 at the top and problem 10 at the bottom. Problem number 1 for me at the moment is the chemistry between Bruno and Ronaldo. Problem number 2 for me, when I look at it in a kind of wider aspect, is what's happening with Maguire and Varane. Problem 3 for me is the fullbacks, the fullback productivity, how they're getting forward, how they're kind of addressing the football, and how they're actually being part of the wider game. And problem number 4 is the double pivot. So problem number 4, you said there you want to talk about McFred. I'm going to talk about McFred 4th because I think if we talk about him number 1, that creates a false narrative. That tells everyone that this football team's problem is McFred. And I'm telling you it isn't. And I'll tell you why it isn't. So when you go from the top, let's talk about Ronaldo and Bruno, first of all. We said that when Ronaldo came to the football club, one of the potential issues was that when they play together for Portugal, it doesn't work. And what do Portugal do about it? Portugal try and play Bruno as a number 8, so they play him a little bit deeper. But the connection between Ronaldo and Bruno is an issue, and it's so much of an issue that Bruno gets pulled after 60 minutes in almost every match. So there's a historical issue there. So Ole has to look at that and solve that. We're seeing this in almost every game, that there is a problem in the way that they set up and how they kind of play the game together as a pairing. They're a number 9 and a number 10. Now let's look at kind of the second problem. Harry Maguire last year became very, very good at progressing the ball. Very good. He used to step out, Lindelof would sit, and he would go. This year, he's got a world-class centre-back next to him, and he stopped progressing the ball. So you have to say to yourself, why have you stopped doing that? So that's something for the manager to answer, because the manager has to tell his captain, get the ball and bring it 10 or 15 yards. Problem 3, Aaron Wan-Bissaka is way off form. And Luke Shaw's form is dipping and sliding. So we saw with Luke Shaw yesterday that probably had his worst game, but he clearly had a problem. He had an injury. You could see he's carrying something.
He's looking injured, yeah.
He's looking injured. So, he's carrying an injury. And we just talked about Maguire there. So it's quite salient to say that maybe Maguire is carrying an injury. So they both play because they want to play. They want to win football matches for United. But you can see there's issues there. So Luke Shaw wasn't getting forward. He got done twice. One where he tried to outjump the defender and they came inside and they broke. And then there was another time when the ball was fed through the channel and Shaw was dead. Like they were in behind and they nearly scored. So that's a problem. So they're the fullbacks of the issue. Let's talk about McFred now. McFred do what McFred do. They're double pivot. We talk every week about how they sit. One goes, one sticks. We say this every week. It's the same thing. Nothing changes. And you saw yesterday that Scott McTominay is still definitely trying to get his fitness back. And Fred is doing the Fred things of running around a lot, addressing the ball and trying to get it off and get the ball forward. Now, neither of those two will ever be great progressive ball passers or carriers. But we have highlighted here, especially statistically, that they both kind of do their jobs. So when they're in those roles, they get the ball, and maybe a Basuma would do it better, maybe a Neves would do it better, but they don't play for you, those footballers. So what is the point in talking about them today? You have to talk about what you've got.
Let's talk about Donny van der Beek, Rob, then.
No, I'm going to add Donny to it. Because Donny's part of that mix. So if you played Donny van der Beek yesterday in what was against a low block, against an aggressive Aston Villa team, setting up to kind of spoil and setting up their midfield to kind of take the ball off you in those bad areas where you don't want to so they can counter-attack, do I believe that Donny van der Beek would have done that better as a number 6? Well, everyone knows I'm going to say no, because that's not what he does. He's not a destructive player. He's a ball player. But I don't want my double pivot against a low block being my ball players. I want the 4 in front of them being the ball players and then the fullbacks. So that is like 6 players, Haider. So that's not a kind of like, half the team do one function and half the team do the other.
But Rob, the problem is when your fullbacks aren't doing that function, you're attacking with 4 players. And it showed yesterday, and that's where, Rob, then, well, we've got a problem. Fundamentally, there's not just one section of the team that is a problem. You've got the fullbacks are a problem. You're talking about the midfield. I disagree with you because I think that you still need, when you're up against a low block, you still need the 2 in the pivot to be progressive. That's one area where Matic is better than Fred and McTominay. We know why Matic doesn't play week in, week out, though. But he is a better line breaking passer than those 2. And I think you still need that from your double pivot. And for me, I don't think McFred are the biggest problem. And a lot of people in the comments and a lot of people on Twitter and YouTube are going to consistently go in on McFred. They're the issue. There's so many more issues to couple with the McFred not being the best that are the issues. But as we're looking at it right now, Rob, would Donny van der Beek would he have been better on the ball, let's say, than Fred yesterday? Would he have been more of an asset against a low block? For me, yes, 100%.
I think when you've got 3 central midfielders in there, which is what Aston Villa played yesterday, that's the low block. They come out hard and they come and press to come and get you in the correct areas. So they sit and then they address the ball. Donny van der Beek has showed nothing in his Manchester United career that tells me that in that system, he would have been better. Not at all. And I think that's why the manager doesn't pick him. I do not believe that Ole sits here and thinks, I'm just not going to play Donny because I don't fancy him and I prefer McFred. I don't think he thinks that at all. I think he's thinking, I've got to play against 3 central midfielders. So I need 2 that are incredibly mobile and that can go and confront players. So unfortunately, Manchester United fans, this is why we play McFred. It's out of function. So if you want a Basuma, you're going to have to wait till January. If you want a Neves, you're going to have to wait till January. For this game, you cannot change it. So I don't see anything in Donny van der Beek's game that says to me, this was the match for him to play in the double pivot. There are going to be other games where you can play Donny as a number 6 with a partner. That partner will probably be more likely someone like Matic. But when you look at what you needed yesterday, Haider, it's all very well to roll the dice and say, I think Donny might have progressed the ball better. No chance. In front of him is Paul Pogba, Mason Greenwood, Cristiano Ronaldo and Bruno Fernandes, and all 4 of them had plenty of the ball. So the issue wasn't how the ball went from A to B to C. And C being the problem at the top end of the pitch. The issue wasn't B. It wasn't what was going on in the double pivot. It's just this lovely, dreamy scenario that United fans have that don't like McFred, who want to kind of cap it on them. And you said at the top of the show, it's not really their issue. It wasn't a McFred issue yesterday. And I agree with that. Yes, I would love to replace them eventually. But we have to plan for the next game, Haider. We can't plan for 6 months' time. We have to plan for what happens next. And bringing, say, Donny into the team for the Champions League game, is that the right thing to do? Well, it depends if we're going to see another low block against Manchester United. I don't believe that Donny van der Beek is the answer.
We are against Villarreal, Rob. We played them before. That's what
he's not a baller, right? Look, Donny van der Beek is not a baller in the sense that he can find passes from open play. He's really good in one-touch football. He's really good at kind of becoming the 8, moving into the 10. He can do that. If he's going to play the 6, he has to play against functional Premier League teams, that are not going to press. So he's got space. Yesterday, that midfield three and McGinn pushing hard on the midfielders and most of the game was about that confrontation. They're 3 against our 2, and then Bruno was coming in there. So it's like a 4-3-3, and those 3 kind of pressing and pushing against each other. And what happened? Villa were the better team. Villa got the ball more in the correct areas, and Villa had the better chances. But Villa didn't have the most possession. Villa didn't have kind of the kind of acute area in the correct areas of the pitch. They just got those chances because of what Manchester United were doing. So for me, it wasn't really about McFred yesterday. They were like the 4th problem. We need to talk about Ronaldo and Bruno. This is a conversation that people are not having. Ronaldo's come to the club. Everyone's really hot. You've all gone and bought his number 7 shirt and you feel great. Well, it is a problem. It might be a problem going forward. You look at kind of that second one when Maguire was really good last season. So much so, he gets into the England setup as like one of the best players at the Euros. You kind of see in the form that we want to see from a captain. He's lost that. So we have to ask why that is. The fullbacks, Aaron Wan-Bissaka is going backwards in droves. He had one good moment yesterday where he ran through the team. Yeah. And I watched his warm up because, again, I'm in the ground 2 hours before. I watched his warm up and the whole team, when they were doing their warm ups, had the coaches with them. The coaches were practicing simple 5 and 10 yard balls with him on his own away from the team. Yeah. So that's a problem for me. I look at that and I go,
that's not a good
look. There's an
Rob.
issue there. No, it's not a good look. It's not a good look. So I'm a football journalist. I look at stuff like that. So I looked at that and I thought to myself, that's not good because they're obviously saying there's an issue here and we need to work with it. So the rest of you go and warm up over there. And Aaron, you come over here because we need to practice your 10-yard passing. So they go and do that. And Aaron still can't pass the ball in the game. So that's an issue. Those 3 things and those pairings, Ronaldo, Bruno, the centre-backs and the full-backs, they are why Man United are having problems. The double pivot is not why we're having problems.
That's your whole team, Rob. That's your whole team from back to front.
It's your whole team. It's your whole team. So this is why the whole thing about blaming McTominay and Fred every week is just pointless and stupid. Because yes, you would like to have better players in there, but you cannot buy them when there's no transfer window open. You could do a left field and say, right, someone like Medjbury, you could go, right, we're going to bring you in and modify you. Like you should be playing as a more attacking player, but you've got ball skills. So we'll sit you deeper and we'll do something different. We might do, say, 4-1-4-1 and do a different system that works. But Ole's not changing the system, is he? He's going to play 4-2-3-1. It's going to be a double pivot. So you need to make the right selection in the double pivot so the other players can do their jobs.
Yeah, well said, Rob. Look, we're going to move on and we're going to talk about just a couple of names that have been in the media. And I just want to reiterate for those that might not like to see this, we're just assessing what's out there, what's been said. We're going to talk about Zidane. We're going to talk about Conte. Before we do that, though, Rob, and look, I mean, we're just looking at Zidane's graphic here and it's phenomenal. We'll talk about that in a second. But are there slight concerns that we're seeing maybe deja vu in terms of, Jose Mourinho finished second, and then he didn't get the players that he wanted. He had an awful season the season after. We're not in that situation at all with Ole, by the way. It's nowhere near. That was a toxic, horrible environment and situation. But are there concerns, Rob, that while better quality has come in, stylistically we haven't got better. I think we've mentioned all these sort of disjointed problems within the team. They don't seem like 8 games into the season they look like they're anywhere near getting fixed. I mean, is there slight comparisons you could say in terms of not the situation, but that Manchester United have finished second and they maybe they are failing to kick on from where they want to be?
Right, let's stop tap dancing around football questions and let's be straight about it. There were issues with Jose Mourinho. They were toxic. They were horrible. It blew up. It was the end. He was gone. There are issues with what Ole's doing at the moment. Now, Ole's had tons of praise from me, and I've backed him and I still back him and I will continue to back him because I think that he can get it right. So that's one thing. But are we seeing a duplication of errors that we saw in year 3 with Mourinho? Well, this is effectively year 3 with Ole when we're looking at kind of the project. And correct, there are problems that we are seeing that happened then, that happening now. What is the main problem? Well, with Jose Mourinho, after year 2, he kind of admitted that he'd hit his ceiling, didn't he? He even said it. He went, this team coming second, one of my greatest achievements, all that rubbish that he talked about. And he kind of hinted that, you know, he wasn't going to get better than that. And we could see it on the pitch. It wasn't looking good. So at the end of that year 2, it looked a bit weird. And then year 3 started and we were all kind of sat there at Old Trafford going, this ain't going to be pretty this year. This year with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, there are similarities there. So we got second last year, you know, and that was an achievement in what it was, but it's not a trophy. And we all said we need to make signings and we need to see progression at the start of year 3. So Ole is still the manager. He's still doing the tactics. He's still the guy. And he's got Ronaldo. He's got Varane. And he's got Sancho. And the football is worse. So this is where the comparisons kind of meet each other. And they are football comparisons. They're not about personality. They're not about Mourinho's toxicity and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's kind of blue sky thinking. This is about football results and football performances. When Jose Mourinho went, what was it, Haider? Was it November? He got sacked? Was it in November? Yeah. So he went in November. So we are now at a stage at the end of September where we've got October and November to come. It is not beyond thought that if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer does not get it right in the next 2 months, that he's gone in November, right? Because that tells you in November where you want to be. If you're in a title race in November, you feel good about yourself. If you're flying in the Champions League and you're through, you feel good about yourself. But if you're out the Champions League and you're 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th, which I look at this Man United team and I kind of think, have I seen 6 better teams in the Premier League this year? And the answer
it's not a quality point though, Rob, because United have
it's not quality point.
So much quality in this squad.
So people said about Jose that the issue was that he didn't get Maguire. So he didn't get Maguire at the end of year 2. So year 3 collapsed. And I said it's got nothing to do with that. It was more about his tactics. It was more about tempo. Like you mentioned that earlier on, and we should have kind of dived deeper into that because I think tempo is one reason why Man United don't look particularly good at the moment. But you look at Ole, he has got pieces now that he didn't have in the last 2 or 3 seasons. So he has to do better. The tactics have to reflect the quality of talent that you have, and they are not. So I think in football terms, we've got every right to sit here on our high horses. And as journalists, you know, I'm a football journalist. I can say, Ole, you need to be doing better. Yes, you're only a point off the top. I think you've got the same points as Man City, but no one cares on the date of September the 26th where you are in the Premier League. People care in a month or 2 or 3. And for me, that's going to be the crunch. Because if we get 2 months now, Haider, of those games that have got to come, and they're all big games, if United cannot improve their performances, they will be losing games. And if they lose games, this manager is gone. It's as simple as that.
Rob, I want to address it because there's there's a comment here from Ronan saying, you know, what makes you what makes you think that Ole can win a trophy, major trophy, and the second one is as long as he gets top 4, he's safe. There is this view, isn't there, amongst the fan base that, you know, the Glazers just want top 4. If Ole gets 4th every single year, you know, he'll never ever get sacked. You know, what is your view on that?
That's been totally correct in the last 2 seasons. So we've seen that in terms of the rebuilding process. They went for someone with maybe less expectation, less expertise. You know, you take Mourinho, he's a Hall of Fame manager. It doesn't work. He's on a huge contract. You bin him. You get a guy who's on less contract but knows the football club a bit better. So that's been an on-rolling process. Now, it's right to say that I think even in the last 10 years, that the Glazers' objective is to stay in the top 4. But that's the minimum standard. If you come 4th, you survive for another season and you get on with it. But it doesn't mean you keep your job as a manager. It just means that the football club can roll over into the next season. But I'm telling you this, you buy Cristiano Ronaldo, the expectation is not to come 4th. The Glazers are not going to sit there and buy Tom Brady for their NFL franchise and think anything but we want to win the NFL. So this is kind of where they think they are sports owners. So they want to win those trophies because it makes them more money. So if you win the Premier League with Cristiano Ronaldo, that picture of him holding the Premier League trophy is worth billions. Really, really is. It's worth an incredible amount of money. So that's why the Glazers have done it. That's why they've pulled the trigger. They want to sell more shirts. They want more commerce. They want to make more money. They want to protect their profits. But I tell you what, if you get forward and it's Ole who looks like he's the guy stopping that, and this is why we're talking about it, it's tactics, then he's gone. So you've got these 2 months now that I think are really, really important, because it was the same thing that Chelsea fans and Chelsea people were saying about Frank Lampard. They were like, he will never get sacked. The team needs to get top four because they're not really in where they want to be. They're buying these players. They've had a big transfer window. Havertz comes in, Werner comes in. It's kind of all looks really rosy. And then Lampard got 2 or 3 or 4 months with those players going through a pre-season into Christmas. And at Christmas, from being top, I think at the start of the season, they were top for about 3 or 4 or 5 weeks at the very start of the season. Got to January and he was gone. And he was a Chelsea legend, the greatest Chelsea player of all time, arguably, him and, you know, a certain JT. So you look at that. So that's a Chelsea question, not for me to answer. But that's how it is. And they didn't wait. The Glazers are as ruthless as any owner. They will look at it if they feel that their manager is holding them back, and vitally that there are other managers available on the market that they can go and get.
This is why I want to say, Rob.
This is what we're going to talk about next. Yes.
Yeah. This is what I want to say, because you've mentioned that, you know, at the time, obviously, Thomas Tuchel, who's a fantastic tactician, you know, he's obviously come in and he's harnessed that quality. And we're looking at Zinedine Zidane here because he's one of those names that has been mentioned in the press. And look, Rob, I mean, it's actually quite staggering. We all know what Zidane has won. You're looking here, you know, 3 Champions Leagues, 2 La Ligas, 2 Super Cups, 2 Club World Cups, 2 Spanish Super Cups as well. Conceded only 23 goals in that 2019-20 season. I mean, look at this stat here, though, Rob. Zidane's won a trophy every 19 games for Real Madrid. And you're looking over here, obviously he's got a 66.2% win percentage at Real Madrid. You know, when you're having a look at all these pieces, and look, we're not sitting here and saying that the biggest thing for me, Rob, is that at the end of the day, I want to see Ole Gunnar Solskjaer be successful in Manchester United. I want him to win trophies, obviously, because I want to see Man United do well. I have an agenda here. I'm not sitting here, Ole in, Ole out. I don't care. I just want United to do well. But at the end of the day, you know, if he isn't performing and there is someone who can get more out of the squad, then I'm also game for that, Rob, because I want to see Manchester United be successful. When I'm looking at it, and we've also got Conte up here, because Conte's been mentioned as well. If you're comparing the two managers, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has done a fantastic job to build this squad, to stop the rot, and there's some really, really good players here. The transition to someone like Zidane, for the way that Zidane wants to play, and obviously he knows Ronaldo, he knows Varane, is a logical step forward rather than to go to someone like Conte. We'll have a look at Conte in a minute. But when you're looking at Zidane and what he could offer to the club, is he an attractive option? Say if Ole does get sacked, maybe at the end of the season, let's just say this does happen. Is he an option for Manchester United? And would he get more out of this squad looking at A, the squad that he had at Real Madrid and sort of the style of players, and B, with his track record?
You just said end of the season. If this is not going to end at the end of the season, you know, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer gets sacked if things are going wrong in the season. So if he gets to the end of the season, it means that he's achieved. He's either got first or second. He maybe have won a trophy. It might not be as pretty as we wanted it to be, but he survived. So then you don't change the manager. I think this is about, as I said, the November question. You get to November and you say, is this the right manager to take it forward? Zinedine Zidane is a strange character in the sense that he's at Real Madrid. He's got a team of Galacticos, and it's his job to piece together Florentino Perez's philosophy. That's kind of what it is. And Zidane over years has had lots of detractors, people kind of saying that maybe he's a bit more of a negative coach than people thought he would be. But you cannot take away his win record. You can't take that away at the hardest club in the world to win, like Real Madrid. You know, if you lose 2 games at Real Madrid, it's worse than Man United. You know, it's just the end of the world, and people are waving white hankies. I've been in that stadium in the Santiago Bernabeu where people are waving white handkerchiefs, and it's amazing. And they show that they want a manager sacked. You know, they show it from. We don't do that at Old Trafford. You know, yesterday Bruno missed a penalty, and we cheered him off the pitch. So it's a different kind of world. I look at Zidane and I look at kind of what the pieces that Man United have at the moment, and I say to myself, does Zidane fit what Man United want to do? Well, if you decide that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is no longer your man, no longer the manager, no longer the guy to lead your project, what you are admitting is that this kind of 2 to 3 to 4 year cycle of trying to rebuild Manchester United in a Manchester United vein, in a Fergie vein, you know, with United people from the ground up, playing attractive football, playing attacking football, that has failed. You have to admit that. And normally football clubs do change every 2 to 3 to 4 years. That's how it generally works, because success breeds longevity, but decline breeds the sacking. There's no doubt about it. When you look at Zidane and you look at how he plays football, he would not be playing football in the Manchester United way. He would be coming to United to win at all cost. So that's why you bring him in. You look at the players you've got and you say, Cristiano Ronaldo, Zidane knows him. Rafael Varane, Zidane knows him. Paul Pogba loves Zidane and was begged to play under Zidane for years. So they're your three superstars, aren't they? Your three of your top players at least. That is where I think Zidane becomes attractive to Manchester United. On the flip side, Zinedine Zidane and his agent have both admitted that England doesn't really suit him. Doesn't suit him. The Premier League doesn't suit his style.
The France job is what he wants, really.
Well, we don't know that. That's speculation. So we can't put that on the table, Haider. We don't know if he wants the France job. We don't know. We really don't. But what he would like is a really big contract. So I think that's what he would really like. And there's one team in the world that would offer him that, and that's us. So United would offer him a contract that he wouldn't even got at Real Madrid. You know, he'll get a deal that's huge. So he might be tempted to come to the Premier League. All I'm going off is actual facts of what he said and his agent in the past, that England doesn't really fit him. But that can change. But then the other guy on the table, of course, is a serial winner who's just won
before we do that,
Serie A.
Can I just bring up 2 points about Zidane? You know, sort of where I think United will struggle with him just because of the personnel, and where United will excel. So when you looked at Zidane when he played, obviously when he was those 3 Champions Leagues, 2 very key players were his 2 fullbacks. We had Marcelo and we had Carvajal. Between them, they had, I think there was about 20 goal contributions. When you look at Manchester United's current fullbacks, and you're looking at Wan-Bissaka, he wouldn't fit as Zidane's system. Luke Shaw probably would. And then the other thing as well, and by the way, I would be very happy with someone like Zidane. I think he'd be a really good fit. But you're also looking at the midfield. I mean, he had Casemiro, he had Kroos, and he had Modric. Casemiro was so keen for him. If you're looking at Man United's midfield right now, there are 2 key areas for Zidane where he obviously built the foundations for his team. And then when you're looking at obviously the flanks, you have a look at the wide man Manchester United have. That's where Zidane would definitely thrive. And then you've got Ronaldo as well. But when I'm looking at those 2 points as well, I think that United would have to upgrade in certain areas if they were going to bring someone in like Zidane.
Well, they would. Of course they would. It's like it's kind of crazy to say that if Zidane came in, that United wouldn't change anything. Of course they would change it. He'd come in and he'd say, "I want £200-300 million transfer kitty, and I want to buy players." So I think that's a given. I don't think that's kind of a point that we can delve into again, because it's kind of a moot point that it's not real. Do you know what I mean? That he will go and buy players if he came to the football club, as any manager would. So I think that's problematic. Is the same way that when Tuchel went to Chelsea last season, Tuchel didn't go there with a finished article, did he? But he still won the Champions League. So it is what it is. You know, if you're a serial winner, your job is to get the most out of those players and then build accordingly. So yeah, you might see that he goes and he looks at Wan-Bissaka and he might go, "I don't fancy Wan-Bissaka, but you know, he's my fullback for 6 months. So I'm going to get him to do 1 or 2 or 3 different things that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer didn't do." And lo and behold, people are then saying Wan-Bissaka's a better player. Luke Shaw's probably the best left back in the world on form. So I don't think that Zidane would look at United's squad and think, I can't do anything with it. We've already said at the top of the show and in previous shows, this is a title-winning squad. So if you go and give it to the right manager, then there's always that way of saying, you know, is there a way of being better under someone else's guise?
Yeah, well said. There's obviously saying don't forget Ten Hag. We're not going to talk about Ten Hag today. He's someone that I really, really do like, and maybe we'll do a masterclass on Ten Hag, Rob, at some other time. We'll break down maybe a quick 30-minute video on what, you know, sort of what he's done at Ajax, what style of play, and, you know, sort of the whole Ajax philosophy. So we can do that for you. But look, Rob, over here we've got Antonio Conte. Now, I've tweeted many times over the last week saying I wouldn't take him. But that's not because I don't rate him. I absolutely love Antonio Conte. I think he's one of the best managers in the world. I loved his passion when he came to the Premier League with Chelsea. Obviously, he won the title with Chelsea. I just don't think he's the right fit for the current squad, Rob. You know, you build the squad in one certain way, and then you're going to go and go with the manager in a complete different direction in terms of style of play. But there's no doubt about it. And this is Conte's season, I believe, last or time at Inter Milan. And look at that win rate. You know, you've got 51 wins in 76 games. And on the right-hand side here of the graphic, you've got his head-to-head with Zidane in terms of average points per match. So you've got Conte pipping Zidane in that respect. And I just think that when you're having a look at Antonio Conte and what he offers to Manchester United, I just think it's a bit of a step back because it's a short-term option. He might deliver a title, but I just think that, you know, maybe the mess he leaves behind after, it would just undo everything that we've done the last 3 years. You know, there needs to be continuity. That's how the club needs to think, and they haven't done that very well since Sir Alex, really.
Just breaking down kind of what you said there and the way you phrased it. There's a little bit of the Mourinho question here going back again with Conte. So it's a stylistic question first and foremost, and the question about winning secondly. So when we had Mourinho being touted for the job around the time of when he was at Real Madrid and he was leaving Real Madrid and came back and he went to Chelsea and around that period, the question was, could he play a Manchester United style of football and win? And I think most of us decided no. When you had 2 years of Van Gaal and Van Gaal kind of doing Van Gaal things, the question became, now Mourinho was available, that could he come to the football club and win? Well, Jose Mourinho proved very, very quickly within 12 months that, yes, he could. He went and won trophies. The football was pretty good. You know, I don't think the football was bad. It was entertaining. United were winning. They brought in Ibrahimovic. They brought in Pogba. They brought in Mkhitaryan. They brought in Bailly. It all kind of worked for a short period of time. But it was a limited shelf life. Let's put it like that. Yeah, it was kind of a 2-year shelf life. In year 3, that it had gone off. I think when you look at Conte, you just said there that you know, short-termism and all of that. I think the clubs that he's left, when he left Chelsea, I would blame Chelsea. I wouldn't blame him. And I think when he left Inter Milan, I would blame Inter Milan. I wouldn't blame him. I think he kind of looked at those clubs and thought, you do not match my ambition, so I'm off. So I don't think it was his fault. So I think that's where he differs with Mourinho. I think Mourinho is a kind of toxic character, and we saw that, and we hoped that when he came to Manchester United that he would change and that he would be a kind of person that maybe would grow into the role as a statesman. You know, we'd see the best of Mourinho, but the worst bits would kind of ebb away. And what we saw was something different. I think with Conte, he came to Chelsea, and the first 6 games, they were awful. And he set up 2 or 3 different ways, played 2 or 3 different systems. They were really bad, to the point where people were going, who is this guy? You know, he's a joker. He's not going to do anything here. And then he kind of went on a run of, I think, about 18 wins in a row or something like that. And it was quite defensive at times, but they played a style of football that meant that they won. And the goals that they scored were nice. They played some nice football. And I'm telling you this now, the Glazers felt that they could bring in Conte tomorrow and win the title this year, and it was only a short-term decision, they would do it. And I think most clubs would. See, clubs want to win and find ways to win in a sympathetic manner to their philosophy, but ultimately winning is all that matters. That is all that matters. Like people, you know, we can kid ourselves that clubs want to build in the right fashion and all of this, but when Liverpool brought Klopp in, they weren't thinking, oh yeah, we're bringing you in because you're going to be the next Shankly. And, you know, City weren't bringing in Pep Guardiola because they're trying to build something beautiful. They're trying to win. Everyone wants to win. And I think when you look at Conte and you look at Zidane, they are both winners. So their appointments would make sense just in the kind of proviso of wanting to win. What it would mean, Haider, is that this whole Manchester United philosophy angle, that was what the Glazers are playing on and have done for the last 2 or 3 years, they would be admitting that that's gone. But do you know what? Ed Woodward is leaving the football club. And it would kind of stylistically make sense for them to say, right, yep, that ends there now. That man has gone on. We're moving that guy out. We don't know what Ole's doing. We're moving him out. And oh, look, one of the greatest footballers of all time and a 3-time winner of the Champions League who's available, who knows Cristiano Ronaldo and knows Varane and knows Paul Pogba is available. Let's hire him. That does not go beyond the kind of realms of reality. I think that could very well happen if Ole doesn't get it right in the next 2 months.
I want to ask a quick question before we wrap up, Rob, about Antonio Conte, because you've seen that, you know, he has walked out of Inter because he didn't feel like they matched his ambitions. The question is, do Manchester United match his ambitions as a club? You can't say over the past, let's say, decade under the Glazers that they've had the same ambition as, say, like a Man City or Abramovich at Chelsea. Do Manchester United as a club match those ambitions of Antonio Conte?
Manchester United has spent over £1 billion on footballers in that time. It's not about ambition, Haider. It's about recruitment. Their recruitment has been absolutely jive, awful, terrible. So that's why United have failed. So we can sit here and talk about the Glazers negatively because none of us like the Glazers. We all know that they've taken tons of money out of the football club, and we all know they've put the club in debt, and it's disgusting, and it's something we will never, ever adhere to. But the fact that Manchester United probably spent more money than any other club except Manchester City shows that there is a level of ambition there. Now, when Antonio Antonio Conte, if he was offered the job, that's what he's looking at. He's going, do Man United buy players? Well, the answer to that is yes. Man United have spent 410 million on players for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So this is not Ole doing it on his own back and kind of like homework on his own, bringing in youth and just taking really bad players and making them good. They've spent a lot of money. But when you spend a lot of money, what do you expect, Haider? You expect trophies or at least title contention. And I think it's been fair to say in the last 2 years that Ole's been trying to sort out Mourinho's problems. Now those have gone. Mourinho's problems are no longer part of Manchester United. Now what we're talking about is tactics. And it could be a case that the board look at the current manager and say, we don't like the tactics. It doesn't work. You're not winning games in the way that we want you to win games. So what's the issue? I think Ole will be given time to fail, because I think that's the other side of it. I think he'll be given 2, 3, 4 months to go down the line. But I'll tell you this now, United will be talking to these people. United will be talking to Zidane. They'll be talking to Conte and saying, what's your availability like? Would you like to have a conversation with us? Let's go do coffee. Because that's how the football industry works. There's lots of kind of whispers and moans there in the background.
That's what they did with Jose, Rob, when LVG was here.
We knew that Jose Mourinho was coming to Manchester United months before Van Gaal got sacked. And during that whole period, people were saying to us in the press, you're wrong. It's impossible. United wouldn't do that. Why would they talk? Why would they go over Van Gaal? The issue was that Van Gaal's contract was up. So we knew that they didn't really want to give him another contract. It was over 2 years with a year option. So United were like, well, it's time to kind of move on. And it was the right decision, I think. I totally agreed with that decision at the time. But now we're at a crossroads with Ole, and there are people who could take his job, who are more experienced, who've got better records of winning and know these players. So you said there, I don't think United would suit Conte. I think it's more the other way around. Does Conte suit United? Well, United want a winner, and they're going to look at the list of winners who are available. And Conte went to Chelsea and stuck it up everyone. Everyone said you won't do anything at Chelsea. Juventus are not the kind of team you've won a title in Italy. It's not the same as winning the Premier League. Well, he won the Premier League. He won the FA Cup the following season. And yes, then he left. But I think that was probably to do with Chelsea's dysfunction, in the same way that he would still be at Inter Milan if it wasn't for their ownership. Their ownership has been bad. I think that United have got a really good squad this year. I don't think Conte looks at it and says, can I get Cristiano Ronaldo to score goals? I think he probably could. I think he'd feel good about that. And I think when you look at the other pieces, the Pogbas, the Bruno Fernandeses, Luke Shaw's, even Harry Maguire, when Harry Maguire's on form, there are players in that team that you can have a core of to be successful. And this is maybe not what we're seeing from Ole at the moment. I want to see more. I want to see that core dominate games. I want to see players come in and out of the team that show that they're worthy of being Man United players. But I need to see tactics that help those players. And that could be where Ole trips up at the end of the day. And he's got to prove it. He's just got, this is what this show is about. Not Ole in, not Ole out. It's hashtag Ole sort it out. Because he needs to show now in the next 2 or 3 months that he can do this. Because if he does not show it, unfortunately, we'll be hugging him, waving goodbye and parting company. Because that is the football business. Football is ruthless. Yeah. If you lose, you are gone. Frank Lampard left Chelsea and they loved him there, certainly as much as we love Ole. So I don't think there's anything there that can keep Ole in the job if he starts losing matches and performances are this bad. And they are bad. These performances are, as I said, 3 or 4 out of 10, maybe 5s now and then. There's nothing that makes me think, this is going to get better in the next match.
And it's a couple of months, Rob, isn't it? Now it's not like it's been
one or two
games. We're looking at, but it's been 7 games now where United haven't really hit the heights they can, and the quality's there for me. Look, Rob, where I sit, and I completely agree with you. But where I sit right now is, I've often said, just given to the end of the season, I'm sick and tired of after every single game, Ole this, Ole in, Ole out, both sides. But the whole argument is just juvenile for me. But where I am sitting right now, Rob, he's got such a big run of games coming up now. And if we don't perform, I don't want us to sit here, if we're out the Champions League, I'm just saying, for example, and we're behind in the title race, I don't want us to have another season where we're written off and we spent so much money and we bought in quality, Rob. Serious quality. I mean, you couldn't find a better defensive option to come in than Rafael Varane. Ronaldo is an incredible goal scorer. Jadon Sancho is one of the best young wingers in Europe, and we did a podcast on him. If anyone hasn't seen that, go and watch that, because
in the world,
he was in the top 98th percentile in terms of creativity in the world, and we've seen none of that. And Ole needs to find a way to integrate him. The way I sit right now, Rob, is that nearly every game is pretty much a must win. The table, I know at the moment looks decent for Manchester United, but the way we're performing and the way things are going, the slow trajectory downwards in terms of performances is a concern for me.
Yeah, look, I'm not interested in anything that looks like a hot take. Ultimately, I kind of look at this and I'm just looking at the standard of football. And United are not doing the simple stuff. And that has to come from a manager. A manager has to coach it into his players' brains that they have to do certain things. And these things are not happening on a football pitch. So the question has to always be why. And I think it's important as fans, and certainly also my role as a journalist, that we ask these questions repeatedly, not in a way that's regressive to hurt Ole or to insult him or kind of, take the mick out of him, or what we talk about on Twitter and how the Twitterverse works in this horrible, kind of backwards toxic way. We're asking this in a constructive way. We're saying, right, what are you going to do to fix it? Well, Ole's not going to say it out loud, but we're supposed to see it, Haider. We're supposed to see it in games. I said yesterday, stood at Old Trafford talking to a load of fans. What do I want to see today against Aston Villa? I want to see United come out the blocks, the first 20 minutes show that they meant business, and in the first half, make Aston Villa feel insignificant. And what I meant by that is that Villa turn up and they go, we're not as good as this lot, so we're going to lose this game, and we accept it, and we'll go home with our tail between our legs. What happened was the opposite. Man United kind of showed that they're dysfunctional. It's the same issues we've seen before. United have got Ronaldo on a pitch, Bruno Fernandes on a football pitch. Jadon Sancho doesn't even get on the pitch. And United are not solving simple problems. If you can't solve simple problems, you will get sacked, because eventually it will reflect in your results and your position in the table. And there are teams in that division at the moment. I think Brighton look better than Man United at the moment. I look at Brighton. I look at today. They could go top today, but I look at Brighton's style of play, and the reason why Brighton are at the top end of the table now, and it might be temporary, it happens with clubs. It's a bit like Bournemouth years ago with Eddie Howe. You get your stylistic properties right, you get the performances right, and you win a few games. So you end up near the top. So Brighton, like you said, could go top. Now, Brighton going top doesn't really mean a lot for Brighton. It will be a proud moment for them. But in football terms, the reason why they're there is because they're getting all of these things right, all the little bits of football that make you good. And you look at Brighton, they might still get relegated, Haider. But today, Potter is getting stuff right there. I'm looking at Ole and I feel the opposite. I'm looking at all the little stuff and I'm thinking, how are you going to solve an issue like Aaron Wan-Bissaka? Why is your centre-back, who was really good last year, now not progressing the ball? Why do we look worse with Varane at the back, and why are we losing more games? Why have you bought Cristiano Ronaldo and getting the ball in the box and scoring goals is becoming a problem? These are right questions to ask. You got Jadon Sancho on the right. Why are you not playing him? Donny van de Beek came to the football club last year. What is the plan for Donny van de Beek? These are all right questions to ask a manager.
And Rob, valid questions. This is not screaming Ole out.
Valid.
These are valid questions, and I think people need to understand that, who are maybe in the staunch Ole insider. These are valid questions that must be asked. You're the Manchester United manager. You've been backed now, so you need to fix these issues, and they're not being fixed.
Valid blank canvas questions that you would ask any manager. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't even matter even if it was Fergie going back. This is the whole thing I think people don't actually grasp of. There were times when Fergie didn't play very good football at all at United. It was a long period of not winning. And even in the years when we were winning, and say maybe we'd kind of win a title one year and not win it the next, the following year when you came second, we were still asking those questions. We were saying, why is this player not up to scratch? There was a whole period when we bought Rio Ferdinand in 2002, and we bought him because for literally 18 months, Man United's back four were making errors like you wouldn't believe. That if Twitter was around then, people would have been, throwing themselves, off the Twitter sphere, upset about how that defense was performing. Man United's defense today is better than that defense was back then. So there are all of these points, and I think it's important we keep asking those questions, because Ole has to find answers, but they're physical answers, Haider. We have to see them manifest on a football pitch. And it's just blunt, unfortunately. If he doesn't answer these questions and this team continues to slide in its performances, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer will not be Manchester United manager beyond Christmas. There's no doubt about that. He now needs to find results, and results will come from better performances. You can get away with bad performances and good results, but I don't see this team doing that now. Like, I said to you before,
Rob. It's not sustainable to do that.
I've said before, the art of a good team is that when you play badly, you win. Yeah, so you can go on a pitch, play terribly like City do sometimes, but you still win. Liverpool play badly, they still win. So that's a marker of a team and their intentions. I don't see this United team being able to sustain bad performances and accruing the correct amount of points. I think if this team continues on this performance trail, you're out the Champions League and you're out the top four. And a manager is then out of a job. So Ole, sort it out.
Can't get more comprehensive than that. Guys, look, thank you so much for all your fantastic comments and questions and engagement today. Really appreciate it. We went a little bit over time, obviously, an hour and 20 minutes. But we had a lot to get through. And look, I think myself and Rob sit in the same boat. We're Ole sorted out. So have a great rest of the weekend. And we'll see you after the Champions League next week.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.